Okay then. You're gonna... Are we there yet?
Hello and welcome to Cinema Smackdown for, what's the date today? July 7th, 2019.
You always know that. It's like it's right in front of you.
It's like it's right in front of me. Well, you hear the pause as I consider. And then, yeah, I take a moment. I like to mark the occasion, the date, have a vague idea of what year it is.
Because we were just discussing the poster outside the radio station that's claiming it's see you in 2017.
See you in the far-flung future of 2017. Come on down to CJLO and see all of our relics. All of the archives.
Oh, I missed 2017 when we didn't have replicants everywhere.
Well, there's a good movie reference as part of our show that talks occasionally about movies. I think we're going to play it a little fast and loose today, aren't we? We don't really have a main topic, but as I understand
we've seen some interesting crap lately, and
we have. And as I understand it, you're a survivor now.
I am a survivor.
You have been to...
I went to the Montreal Comiccon, and I no longer fear hell.
Shane, tell us a little bit about your trip to Montreal Comiccon. First of all, why did you decide to go this year?
I was thrust into it as, well, one, I'm scouting it out as a possible venue to promote my book next year. So I want to see if it was worthwhile buying a table or not. And while I was walking around, I was wearing a t-shirt promoting my book, Necropolis, which has one of those codes in the back that you can scan with your phone, or as I like to call it by the technical term, blocky, blobby, stupid phone thingy.
You're such a cutting-edge technology guy.
Yes, you can tell I didn't design that particular code thing myself. This was part of my tech guy's push to say, well, let's get this on a t-shirt. Let's order t-shirts, and let's get you in a t-shirt in time for the show next week. So it's a bit of a rush. And once we went through all that quickly, I figured, I guess I better go down there and make an appearance and spend 12 hours walking the floor.
I take it now you have a good stock of t-shirts.
I do. I have a backlog of t-shirts that I need to start firing at people out of a t-shirt cannon just to get rid of them all.
I like this. I wonder, is a t-shirt cannon the kind of thing you can rent?
Or steal from your local rock show, I guess. Right. Yeah.
You just take a day job as a roadie.
Yeah. I could. Fire my own merchandise out into the crowd instead of a t-shirt for, name a band.
It's always a good murder weapon, as per what the Simpsons keep telling me.
Yeah, well, I might try doing a point blank in a few people's faces with a t-shirt cannon. Yeah.
Die by promotion. So,
given the content of the book and its morbid themes, that would be appropriate.
I didn't get to this up top, but I'm your host, Michael Brody, and I'm joined today by Shane Simmons, who has braved the hell of the Montreal Comiccon, which comes to our town. I mean, it's become a thing every year, so it's one weekend of 3 days.
Yeah, and I went spelunking through the entire venue, and lo and behold, I actually found some comic books for sale. Because this is a rare...
I don't understand. What could you possibly mean by these words?
Yeah, comic books at a comic con, it almost doesn't happen anymore.
I thought the whole point was to promote your indie horror splatter film. Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, or sell any number of crap.
Right.
There were so many booths selling so much stuff, including stuff completely unrelated to comic books. Why did Costco have a booth at the Montreal Comiccon? I don't know. Why did Massotherapy, two of them I think, have booths at the Comic-Con other than, well, nerds need to be touched too?
Yeah, more than most.
Yeah. So you'd hit the occasional one of those booths and go, okay, I don't understand why this is at this particular trade show. But then again, most of it was selling regular merch like tumblers, flasks, wallets, and of course endless shirts, all of them with logos from some geek culture thing or other. So, if you absolutely positively need to have a wallet with an Avengers logo on it, well, here's 50,000 of them. Mm-hmm. Enjoy.
Any tattoo artists?
Oh, yes.
Big booths there?
There was indeed. No one actually giving tattoos, but there was one in particular. I might have to contact her again because she was selling something that I find irresistible, and I don't even want to say it on the air in case someone runs out and buys it immediately. But she had done a portrait of Jonathan Carroll as Mike Ehrmantraut, and it was kind of gorgeous, and it's like, I kind of want this on my wall, because I love Mike Ehrmantraut so very much.
Right, I get that. I think you got his family name wrong, though, the real guy.
Jonathan Banks, sorry.
There we go.
I was thinking of someone completely different.
That's fine,
yeah.
But I was like, that's not remembering me right. It's Jonathan Banks.
No, I knew someone by that other name once upon a time, and he was a real dick, too.
By the way, worth looking up Jonathan Banks' STD commercial from the late 70s.
Oh, yeah, that's
where
awesome.
He gives complete misinformation on how to protect yourself, which is phenomenal. He himself has come forward and said, do not listen to the idiot in this ad. Everything he says.
Oh, yeah, I think he was on, was it the Colbert? One of the Colbert shows,
he was on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, where they showed
then he's done multiple appearances about that PSA.
Well, he's very famous now, so that's when the old commercials come out of the woodwork.
Well, obviously this tattoo artist was very fond of him as well, and had spent a good number of hours rendering his face in exquisite detail, in all its craggy wonderfulness.
I mean, of all the things you could have on your wall.
Yeah, and I was telling her, it's like, well, she was saying, I don't think I've seen her in anything other than Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And I said, well, have you seen Gremlins? And she's like, well, yeah.
I believe he's in Beverly Hills Cop as well.
Right, but Gremlins is a particularly funny one for me, just because...
I don't remember. What is he playing?
He plays like the deputy of the sheriff. He's just a cop.
Right.
A little bit goofy.
And he's a kid.
And he has hair.
Yeah.
Well, kid. He's probably 30s, I guess.
Yeah. He's a kid for what he is
considering
now.
He's 1,000 years old now, and I'm really hoping they finish shooting Better Call Saul. Much as I love the show, I don't know. Watch another 10 seasons of it. Jonathan Banks is not getting any younger. So.
I mean, I just want to watch 10 more seasons of Better Call Saul just so I can find out how he dies on that show. That's the biggest question.
Well, spoiler.
That's what I've got.
Yeah.
I have to know.
Considering we've already had flash forwards in Better Call Saul to beyond the point where he is no longer on this earth.
Right. Well, they do have those wonderful year 3000 flash forwards on Better Call Saul. I mean, it's so relevant. I'm glad they do it. It's much like that scene at the end of that Simpsons episode where it's Smithers' head in a jar chasing robot Mr. Burns. They do that with Walter White.
Sure. So
I can get away with saying that, right? Because about 8 people have seen Better Call Saul. It is, despite being the most critically acclaimed show of all time, not watched by a single person I know other than you.
And I am the most loyal fan you will find.
You're a little too loyal as far as I'm concerned. You don't have enough of a critical mind for it. Even though, let's be 100%...
In this episode, Mike Ehrmantraut reads the phone book.
Yeah,
I'm all in.
Let's be clear here. As much as I like Better Call Saul, it is the Phantom Menace of Breaking Bad. It is the, hey, I've always wanted to see what this guy was like as a small child.
And you, sir, can go straight to hell.
But yet I'm not wrong. That's the thing. Anyways, so...
No one on that show complains about sand.
No, but they do complain about the inclusion of a Jar Jar Binks-like character. Anyway, I'm talking, of course, about his office mate. She's a little rough.
Oh, her, okay. Because for a second I thought you were talking about Nacho, and I was going to say, that's racist, sorry.
She's pretty amazing, actually. She's maybe my favorite character on the show, so she's definitely not the Jar Jar. She's the Qui-Gon, if you will. Let's just keep it in the Tess wheelhouse of endless Star Wars references.
And she's not even here to echo that.
She's not even here to fight back against us.
So, also at the show, there was an endless parade of celebrities I've never heard of, which kind of flies in the face of what the word celebrity is supposed to mean. But a lot of them is like, well, if you didn't watch that particular show, you don't know who this person is.
Right.
So for me, the actual celebrities were Lou Ferrigno, oh God, I'm trying to remember, Christopher Lambert.
Wow.
He was there.
Speaking of people who are 1,000 years old now.
Yeah, today at the show they have Shatner, but I've seen Shatner before, so that's not a big deal. And Elijah Wood, who was charging $95 for an autograph and another $95 for a selfie.
Wow.
So F you, Frodo.
That's actually surprising to me because he is a very available person. He is maybe the celebrity I'm aware of who is the most open to hanging out with people and being pleasant. And I say this because I've done that with him. And he was super relaxed and very, very pleasant about everything. And he's also a chatty guy.
So you were his Sam Gamgee bitch for a day.
Oh God, no! I didn't open my mouth. I had nothing to say to him. Actually, at this point, I would have one or two things to say to him because he has a production company that primarily makes horror films, and they're interesting. He is one of the main people responsible for the Nicolas Cage Mandy movie from last year. Yeah, he's one of the producers on that, and his company essentially funded it.
Apparently, since doing Lord of the Rings, he's been doing a lot of indie films, and do love him for it. I'm last year was a tremendous fan of I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. But apparently, he's trying to make up the deficit by overcharging fans to take pictures with him.
I mean, I like to think that in theory, if they don't advertise this, I guess it's not happening. But it would be wonderful to hear that, yes, it costs $200 to take a picture with me, but every penny of that is going to a charity I care about. Then it's fine. But if it's going to your smokes, I'm not so interested. And I have seen Elijah Wood smoke. Ugh. Ooh. A pox on you.
But it was a hobbit pipe.
Yeah, well,
with brindleberry fiddlesticks. Right?
At any rate, yeah, he is a very pleasant guy from what I can tell, so I'm surprised he's that one of those folks. What about Michael Madsen? What was he charging for?
Yes, Michael Madsen. I did not see any numbers posted for Madsen. He was probably just happy that people give a damn. Mm-hmm. I did go to his seminar, or I caught the end of it. I was doing other things at the show, but I popped in for the last, 20 minutes of it, when it was question period with a bunch of people saying, "So how did you get into acting?" The usual crappy questions you get from fans. But he was...
Did you do any time for cutting that guy's ear off? Because we all know that really happened.
Inevitably, of course, he talked about that scene fairly at length. Of his anecdotes, the interesting one was when he was first offered it, he's like, "Well, I don't want to play Mr. Blonde, I want to play Mr. Pink."
Right.
And Tarantino said, "Okay, well, come in and read for Mr. Pink," and he did. And then Tarantino immediately told him, "Yeah, you're not Mr. Pink."
Yeah, no kidding. If you don't know this piece of trivia, Tarantino 100% wrote the role of Mr. Pink for himself, had absolutely no plans whatsoever to let another actor take that part because, let's be clear, it's the star-making part of that movie.
It is. And it did make a star of
and then
Steve Buscemi.
Buscemi walked in and he realized, I have to be realistic. It's a better movie if this guy plays that part. And that's it. That was what happened.
And it is that guy's career if he gets to play this part as well.
Yeah. I mean, without Mr. Pink, we would never have had Buscemi's performance as Buddy Holly in Pulp Fiction.
Well, I was going to say we would forever know him as Chet from Barton Fink.
All right, we're going to do a quick commercial break, and when we come back, more tales of the horror of Montreal Comiccon.
Bucket List Music Reviews is proud to bring you Bucket Fest 4.0, happening at Fronibar on Friday, July 12th.
Hey, that's our producer again.
Mm-hmm.
Producer.
But yeah, I'm all for getting her to do the show.
I haven't approached her about it, and I probably wouldn't have bothered her about it, except now she lives there.
Right.
Like within spitting distance of the studio, so I figure she's fine to, if she's interested. I'm not going to pressure her, obviously.
You never know. Tess could come bursting through that door at any moment.
You never know. I don't remember there being a big black border thing in the window here. I remember it being straight through before now.
It was.
Maybe it's a blackboard.
Someone moved something in there temporarily, I think.
Oh, I chose a really interesting ad today. If you hear this reverberating, that's my choice.
Ooh, spacey.
I think there were words in there. Maybe.
Always good communication skill when you can't understand a damn thing on a radio.
Always good. We're about to be back.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, that's what happens when you randomly choose a promo to put on right before you come back on air, and it turns out it's kind of not in any language from Earth. I kind of liked that ad. I have no idea what that person was saying until they said CJLO 1690, which I was very clear about. Speaking of which, we are back. Our show is Cinema Smackdown, and this afternoon we're chatting about the majesty and pageantry of the Montreal Comiccon, something Shane attended this weekend.
Against my better judgment.
As a promotional tool for his newly released novel.
Well, not really, because the shirt is for the original first one of the series. You know,
well,
you got to start them from book one.
True enough. But yeah, that's the whole idea. You have a couple of books, and then people go, "Wait, there's 3 of these. Let's see if the first one's tolerable."
Yeah, well, I'm starting to see my read-through numbers, so it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, you should just put up like 4 sequels that are, when you open them, they're garbled. People are like, "Oh, he had 6 books," but
and they all say nothing but lorem ipsum.
I'm sorry, I don't get that reference.
That's the standard temp text for publishing. And if you just want to do a layout, it's like lorem ipsum, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Much like the watermelon cantaloupe that they ask extras in TV and movie sets to say out loud over and over and over. Are you aware of that? When people are in the background of a shot and they want to be looking like they're talking, they are often suggested to say the words watermelon cantaloupe over and over because it's different shapes of the human mouth.
Right.
And when you hear 19 people muttering that, it just sounds like indistinct dialogue. It is an oddly effective mantra.
Are you sure it's not just a bunch of extras making requests for catering?
You never know.
Gets hot on those sets.
It does, doesn't it?
So
I'm looking around because I'm hearing music that's louder than our voices emanating from somewhere. So I'm just
it's like we work at a radio station.
Really enjoying that aspect of our experience here today. You know, it's kind of like that moment when you realize your new neighbor has moved in and they're the most horrible people in the world, and you're trying to figure out how you can slip rat poison into their food without getting caught.
So speaking of the most horrible people in the world, Comic-Con.
Yes, good plan. Let's get back to that.
So, I had not been to this iteration of the Montreal Comic-Con. We used to have Comic-Cons here many years ago, which were just stuck in a little hotel off the highway.
Usually 2 or 3 not terribly famous artists or cartoonists.
Yeah, my joke was always, it was 2 guys who could drive there and 1 guy they paid to fly in. And that barely managed to fill out the guest schedule. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was basically like 1 big room of retailers and nothing but comic books for sale.
Right.
Maybe a few toys in the mix that were related to comic books.
And that part is pretty much done and over with now.
Oh yeah, now it is all about the toys. It is all about the movies. It is all about everything other than comic books. Comic conventions have typically had an artist alley where various people who do comic books sit there and they draw and they do sketches, and you can buy some of their original artwork, and there may be a few writers in the mix as well, and they'll sign copies of their comic. And when I hit the artist alley section of the Comic-Con, the new, improved, modeled after San Diego Comic-Con that we have here and have had for the last decade, by the time I hit that section, I did not realize I was even in artist alley, because where were the comic book artists? Well, it was mostly people selling artisan stuff and handcrafted stuff. That was where the tattoo artist was, for example. And then towards the end, I hit a couple of people. It's like, oh, okay, yes, this is
a person I might have.
This is someone I've worked with, or someone I've heard of, or because I should mention I used to do comics a million years ago, and I have done the San Diego Comic-Con, so. Seeing the comparisons between that and what the Montreal Con has become are evident. And also what I've heard has become of the San Diego Comic-Con since I've been out there, because increasingly they're not about the comic books themselves, they're about everything that's been derived from the comic books rather than the actual original work. So here there were a limited number of booths. There was, maybe I'm going to guesstimate about 6 retailers who were actually selling actual comic books, and then a billion everything else.
Right. Well, what gets me is that my understanding is a lot of the folks who go to these things now are not professional artists. They're people who draw for themselves and post things on various message boards, who then go to these conventions and think, I can sell the prints of my work It's like,
oh yeah, there's certainly were
like
a bunch of them. Yeah.
You're a pinup artist who works by yourself, has never been invited to contribute to any professional material, but you've drawn a kick-ass Deadpool picture. What it strikes me is that people buy them. It's like, all right. I mean, do you want to give $30 to this person or $30 to someone who's actually worked on a book? I guess it's okay either way.
If it's pretty enough that you want to hang it on your wall.
A lot of it isn't, though. And
that's
what strikes me is the level of amateurness.
Yeah, there's stuff that is in the realm of, I'll be generous and say crap.
I'm glad you're being generous.
No, I mean, there's a certain eye appeal for a certain sensibility, but it's not my sensibility.
Correct. Okay.
However, I did see some stuff that, by these people, there were a few booths that would say, yeah, that was genuinely nice. There was one, and I'm going to butcher his name, but it really put me into mind of Bill Sienkiewicz. Mm-hmm. It was that sort of painted style, semi-abstract, but a nice mood and a nice tone to it that I quite liked. Not that I bought anything from him, but, I did appreciate some of the work there. Mm-hmm. Also, in the realm of just the amateurs, the comics fans expressing themselves, of course, there were the legions of cosplayers.
I've heard it's kind of an out-of-control sort of wave of horror.
To the point where, in the program itself, there's an entire page devoted to the concept of cosplay does not equal consent.
Yep. Well,
don't touch.
The thing I understand about cosplay these days is that there is always that problem of if someone's in a costume, some people just think that they're super weirdos who wouldn't mind at all if I grabbed that handmade wing sticking out of your back or what have you.
There were a few people who kind of crossed the line. Either they still thought Pride Month was going on, or they came straight from a BDSM convention. A few of them, I would say, were scantily clad to the point where a stripper would say, girl, put some clothes on.
Right. Well, I think the bigger issue now, that's an issue with cosplay, but the bigger issue is people wandering in with full-on 100% legitimate weapons.
Yes, there was actually a weapons check booth.
And you can't bring a sword into a public place. You can't bring a working gun.
Yeah, well, there were people.
Knives.
There were people with pretend weapons.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my favorite moments was when a very realistic Jim Gordon in a Gotham City police bulletproof vest.
Did you say J. Jonah Jameson?
No. Yeah, one or the other. It could be J.K. Simmons as any of them. But yeah,
I want to cosplay as him in Whiplash.
No,
that means I'm going to scream at people a lot.
This guy had a very strong Walter White / Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon vibe to him.
Right.
And he was wearing the sort of Gotham City flak jacket. And on his way to the bathroom, he dropped his gun, which clattered across the floor. And it's quite a realistic looking gun, but it was obviously it was plastic. You could hear it. You could hear it was plastic, but
I'm not even really down with those, to be honest. It's a drop it or I'll shoot moment.
It certainly is. You do not want to walk around in public in front of a cop wearing that as your sidearm because it is a little too realistic.
I've seen Die Hard. I know that a chubby cop on patrol on his way home might shoot a kid if he sees the wrong plastic toy.
Yeah. This certainly did not have the orange cap cone of safety to designate. Don't worry about this. It's just a toy.
Right. So, is that the majority of what went down at Comic-Con? Cosplaying and...
well, I mean, the cosplays, obviously they draw the eye. Yeah, I played a fun game of count how many damage girls were dressed as Harley Quinn. I think it went into the hundreds.
Wow.
And including one who was in the most revealing costume. What can I say? Her, with no stockings or anything, her ass was hanging out so hard that everyone, it just drew the eye to the point where you could hear people reacting in her wake as she walked through the show. Also, in the nudity front, I would caution guys, please, nobody like Jared Leto's Juggalo Joker. Don't go to the convention topless, dress as him. It's just upsetting to look at. It's like, yeah, I know you got the stupid Joker fanboy tattoos inked all over your body to recreate that wonderful interpretation of everyone's favorite clown prince of crime, but that particular interpretation, it just sucks.
Right.
And there are a bunch of those.
And yet DC is still adamant that one day they will make another movie with him in it, despite the fact that they're making multiple other movies with different actors playing the Joker.
Right.
I actually just heard a recently revealed piece of information. There is a good reason why Henry Cavill was in the last Mission Impossible movie, and that reason is that he and McQuarrie were in talks to work on a Superman film together. That is how they became friendly.
Okay.
How he wound up casting him. And McQuarrie had an idea. It was basically going to be Man of Steel 2, and it was going to have something to do with the Green Lantern Corps. So it was going to be some sort of crossover thing with Superman and Green Lantern, of all things. Now that...
And Superman had to go incognito, so instead of wearing his Clark Kent glasses, he grew a mustache and a beard.
Oh, dear God. Yeah, there's quite that mustache. That mustache thing is going to follow all of us forever. It is pretty funny when you think about it, how mustache gate what that was. It was a couple of years ago now, but it was still insane that two franchises collided over one guy's facial hair choices. It must be fun to be that much in demand.
Well, it must be fun to have as much power as Tom Cruise had to say, yeah, he ain't shaving that mustache.
Yeah, it wasn't huge.
Well, I don't care what reshoots for what he's doing. He's on my project now.
While Cruise is is a producer on those, it was in fact McQuarrie who I've heard say he had to draw the line, because he said, in order for Henry to grow the mustache back, we will have to stop production for 6 weeks. So he said to Warner and to the DC studio, he said, if you guys want to pay for 6 weeks of downtime on Mission Impossible 6, we'll take it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, he can't shave.
Possible. It might have been the lawyer cudgel. It might have been the Cruise cudgel. I don't know, but I feel like someone had that cudgel in their back pocket to say, "Yeah, here's how it's going to play out."
It is pretty amazing. At any rate,
so we're going to get a bunch of film students to CG out his mustache, and it'll look fantastic.
It is amazing to me where we're at with technology these days, and where we are not with technology. We can't make a man with a mustache look competently like he doesn't have a mustache, but we can put people in space and make that look like it's being filmed in space for real. It's an odd and interesting line that we're continuously crossing and uncrossing.
Well, because usually the cheaper option is shave the damn mustache, right? But so we don't have loads of technicians who have all sorts of experience in removing mustaches digitally.
Yeah, well, also, I have seen Monsters, Inc. They figured out how to digitally create hair.
Yeah, okay, well, if you wanted him to have shaggy blue hair coming out of his lip, would have been awesome.
It would have been an interesting plot point. I mean, he was dealing with a lot of radioactive items, so you never know. Something strange could happen.
Superman comes back from the dead, and he's covered in blue John Goodman hair.
I like it. Sold. You probably don't know this. I just read about it the other day. There is a full-on multi-episode Monsters Incorporated television show coming for the new Disney Channel, and it is voiced by Goodman and Crystal. They are returning to these roles to do a series. Oh, I've forgotten the title though. It's like Monster Adventures or something.
It's a little surprising because John Goodman is the hardest working man in show business.
He's up there.
And Billy Crystal, that's not surprising because Billy Crystal doesn't do anything anymore.
Not a lot, no. He's it's a shame he didn't become a director. I thought his work was interesting when he started directing, but he was doing vanity projects, and I wish that he had tried something else.
If he really applied himself, he could have been the new Danny DeVito.
Exactly. Or the new Rob Reiner.
Oh, yeah, please, could we have a new Rob Reiner? Yeah. I'm tired of the old Rob Reiner.
I'm very tired of the old Rob Reiner. I'm not a huge fan of the second half of his career, not so much. At least the second half of his directing career is a little rough. He and Ron Howard have kind of a running tally of movies that upset me after the other. At any rate, so is that everything about Comic-Con? We're at the halfway point of our show. Have we Comic-Con'd out?
Oh God!
If there's bile to spew?
Any more bile? Well, I should mention I did catch Monica's show. Monica,
right. I'll just remind everybody we're listening to CJLO 1690. This show is Cinema Smackdown. Our guest last week was Monica Hamburg, tell me a little bit about the show that she did.
Yeah,
this
so
time.
she did the hentai edition of her pornomedy panel of stand-up comics talking about dirty films.
Mm-hmm.
So this was funny because it was the only event I'm aware of at the show where they carded people.
Right.
So I went up there to the conference room. Now, before that, I had been at the Grand Masquerade, which is quite a well-attended show where all various competing cosplayers get up on stage to be voted on about who has best costume in various categories. And I had half an hour to kill before Monica's show, so I sat for a bit of that and watched the two hosts mug their way through some iffy material as far as the comedy value went. A half an hour of that, and I was good. So then I toddled off to the Monica thing. And they were carding people outside, which I had read about in the program, that they would be checking people as
I mean, I'm sure they carded you. You do
clearly
look like you might be under 25.
Considering that everyone who was going in was lined up at the carding table, I just said, okay, fine. So I lined up at the carding table. And then I got waved out of the group by a guy saying, "Oh, monsieur,
you're good."
Brought me over. And it's like, yeah, you basically said, yeah, you're good. And it's like, yeah, I just turned 18.
You don't look like an elf and a warrior. I think we're good.
Yeah.
You're not a 300-year-old who really looks about 11. Yeah. So I think you're going to be okay.
I'm aging better than Christopher Lambert.
Indeed.
I'm sure he's about 50 years older than me at this point.
I mean, he looks it.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked terribly good since around his Mortal Kombat era.
Well, I was going to say, for an immortal who was the one, because there can be only one, he was it. He's not hanging in there all that great.
I love to point out how, if you watch the movie Highlander has one of the single most definitive endings of a story you will ever see.
Yeah.
It ends in a way that means there is no possibility whatsoever of continuing this story.
There can be only one. He gets the greatest gift in the universe.
It is fully
and we are so done.
We're the most done you could be with a movie. It's almost as
now,
done as you would be at the end of Cabin
Now,
of the
Q,
Woods.
how many sequels and how many TV shows?
All based on this misunderstanding of how the concept works. You watch any of them and you go, do you guys even know what the premise of the first movie was?
Could you please define the word one for us?
Yeah. Apparently it's guy in a trench coat with a sword is the plot of everything else.
There can only
logic.
be 50 of those guys.
Yeah, there's no logic. And the saddest part, of course, is that the original director of the first movie actually did direct the second movie, which is the most incomprehensible film ever made. It's up there. And yeah, there's all sorts of revelations in the first sequel of the real lineage of the Highlanders, and they just toss out ideas like, oh, they were aliens all along. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about as much as they explain it. By the way, we had this really interesting mythology that we're throwing away to just kind of blankly mention they're aliens. And now a whole bunch more aliens are showing up. Just because. It makes the plot holes in the Terminator movies seem absolutely rock solid perfect, I'd say, in comparison. And
don't worry, that new Terminator film is going to sort it all out for us.
It's going to sort it all out. I can't wait to see how Christian Bale figures into it. And I guess there's not much chance of an Anton Yelchin return.
No, I am not holding my breath for that one.
No, not likely.
And neither is he, actually.
Ooh, I was being rough. You're being rougher. So, you want to get into the stuff that you and I watched in the last 10 days?
Sure.
Because, I mean, the original premise of this episode is that we were going to talk about Chucky.
Chucky versus Godzilla.
Exactly. And you attended the Godzilla movie without me, but we attended the new Child's Play movie together. And those are both long-running franchises that have, I don't want to say worn out their welcome, but how was the Godzilla movie in terms of being another reboot, or was it just a sequel to the last
It
one?
was a direct continuation of the 2014 Gareth Evans Godzilla film.
The Aaron Taylor Johnson movie.
To the point where I was reminded how much of that film I had forgotten, because there's all sorts of supporting casts that are back again, and I was trying to remember, oh, was she in the previous Godzilla film? I don't...
It's got that wonderful Stranger Things crossover going.
Yeah. So the film itself isn't terrible. That's faint praise.
That's high praise.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who came out of this film complaining. It's like, there's just so much monster fighting. It's like, why the hell do you go to a kaiju film otherwise?
Right.
It's like complaining that, I went to the porno and there wasn't enough plot.
Right. It's the layered character work in a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a human subplot in a Godzilla film going back to the beginning. But the headliner is always the monsters kicking the crap out of each other. But on the human front, being that they kind of raise Godzilla to sort of a Lovecraftian Cthulhu type level of monster legend in this film, which kind of is fitting. But the overall plot, I've never seen a film that is so pro-genocide. And for people who haven't seen it, I don't want to get too heavily into spoilers, but there is a character in this film whose motivations are hidden for a chunk of the running time. And then when it's revealed, oh no, I'm part of the bad guy plot. And the bad guy plot of this is we need to activate all these monsters that are hidden all over the world because they used to be part of the natural order of things. And as it turns out, whenever one of these monsters rampages through a city, as they've seen in the aftermath of Godzilla stomping all over San Francisco is still in ruins, but it's become a thriving ecosystem of plants growing up through the skyscrapers and the rubble. And apparently everywhere these monsters go, life flourishes afterwards. And the idea is, okay, well, we're killing the planet because we're awful humans. So we need to let these giant civilization-destroying monsters loose. So they'll restore the balance. Now, they'll kill billions of people, ultimately, and reduce us to a tribal level, not unlike the tribe we saw on Skull Island and Kong Skull Island. Humanity will probably be reduced to that again. But, hey, we'll save the planet, so... Yay!
Well, I'm in that.
Yay, Mother Earth!
I'm fully in that corner. So now I've got to see this Godzilla movie because I'm fully on that side.
But the character who is revealed to be in on this is like, we're supposed to like this person, and then we find out, oh, you're part of a sinister plot, but for supposedly altruistic reasons. And there is a moment where this character kind of redeems themselves by acting heroically, and there's a get in the car moment, and one of the characters is supposed to get in the car with this person, has an armed escort, and why that person doesn't say, shoot this person in the face immediately, they're a monster. They're the worst, they're worse than King Ghidorah, three-headed dragon beast, slaying everything. This person is condemning billions of people to death. I don't care that I've had a certain amount of affection for them in the past. Execute them now.
Right.
That doesn't happen in a film loses me completely.
Right.
So yeah, we're supposed to be on the side of or semi on the side of people who are doing something that is monstrous beyond any atrocity ever committed by humanity in the past. Meanwhile, it's like, well, I'm not on board with that, but the monsters beating up each other, some of that's pretty cool.
All right then.
So yeah, certainly another one of those. It is the Monster Universe, or Monsterverse as they're calling it, will continue with Godzilla versus King Kong early next year.
They don't have a choice.
It's already in the can, yeah.
Actually, it's been taken fully off the schedule because this movie's so wildly underperformed.
Well, wildly underperformed, and yet it made a mint, but it underperformed by Hollywood expectations. So it cost a tremendous amount of money to make. It made a tremendous amount of money, but not a tremendous enough amount of money.
Correct.
Because last I heard, it was like the 8th highest grossing film of the year so far, which you would think equals success. But no, not by Hollywood creative accounting metrics.
It's the same thing for the Solo movie last year. The Solo movie, by any measurement, made an absurd amount of money. It just didn't make a Star Wars amount.
The thing is, the Godzilla film, I'm sure, will make money because it will perform in the Chinese market.
Right.
Whereas Solo doesn't, because the Chinese don't give a crap about Star Wars.
Right. But the point being that, at the moment, the future of this MonsterVerse would have been dead had they not already shot an entire other film that they're now on, they're
Right.
They have to release it. They don't have a choice. But I'm fairly sure that had it only been in development, it would have been killed.
Right.
But they had already done principal photography, and it's ready to get, they're finishing it.
Surely Kong Skull Island did well. I mean, I only just caught up on that. I watched it shortly before going to see the Godzilla film. And
I will continue to argue that regardless of, we haven't talked about that movie, but regardless of anybody's feelings about that entire movie, which there's some crazy stuff in that film I don't like, but I think the first 2 minutes of that movie are, without question, a masterpiece of filmmaking. That opening sequence is so well done and engaging. I just wanted to watch 2 hours of that movie.
Well, there is 2 hours of that film. It's called Hell in the Pacific, starring Lee Marvin and Toshiro Mifune.
But that's what's missing from Hell in the Pacific.
A giant monkey.
A giant monkey hand. I love my giant monkey hands.
No, I actually quite enjoyed that film.
Good.
I did get a kick out of it.
Sam Jackson, it's the rare movie where I would say I kind of wish he wasn't in the film, because he goes from 0 to 1,000 in 1 second and then never comes back. He's basically screaming, "We need to kill that mother effing monkey," for 90% of the movie.
Yeah.
And his reasoning is not great.
No,
there are a pile of characters in this film, though, in this Skull Island movie, that I'm like, you seem very dedicated to this thing I don't think anyone should be dedicated to. They do not a great job of it.
There does seem to be a missing extra bit of heavy lifting as far as Sam Jackson and his character motivation. It's kind of there where the film takes place. The film takes place at the end of the Vietnam War, and he's a commander who's not happy that they're leaving this war unfinished and basically lost. And then he gets this mission to bring some people to Skull Island, and things go terribly, terribly awry, and it's like, well, this is my new war, and I'm going to win this one.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I like best about Kong Skull Island in terms of anything thematically is that the King Kong that we see in this movie is not, anatomically speaking, an ape.
Right.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You cannot look at that and say to yourself, well, here's where an ape...
This is the one that acknowledges, no, Kong is really a monster.
Exactly. He's a creature in this film, which is great. That's a fun choice. It's a different choice, too. So I think
he's also substantially bigger, and they make reference to the fact that he's still growing, which, is obviously a setup because we need him to face off against Godzilla X number of years after this one takes place, and they need to be of equal height.
And doesn't Skull Island end with a mention of Godzilla?
There's a mention of the major monsters that are yet to appear in the Godzilla King of the Monsters movie.
All right, well, speaking of monsters and major monsters, let's do a quick ad break.
Ready for some thrills, spills, chills, and kills? Fantasia, North America's premier genre film festival, takes over the downtown campus of Concordia University once again.
They're doing here.
Come get your frights into
What are they doing at Concordia?
Shorts from around the world from July 11th
they're running shorts here.
DJs spin live
Or at the
Hall Theater every day.
Right, Hall Theater.
Visit
I keep forgetting it's Concordia as well.
movies,
I only went to school there.
Sure
Why would I know that?
You don't need to memorize what they've been up to since. Kind of when you walk out the door, you're never supposed to come back.
Yeah, well, exactly. Jesus. Yeah,
Do you think all electronic
20 seconds.
They spent all my tuition money on a lot of stuff I never got to benefit from.
To the calm.
How it goes.
Yeah.
To the gloom. From the cutting edge of the music scene to those that stood the test of time. From 100 BPM to 180 and everything in between.
Plus, you'll get to listen to a weekly mix performed live by me. Rick Sessions is on air every Thursday from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Live only on CJLO, 1690 AM, and on CJLO.com.
Alright.
And we're back on CJLO 1690. Our show is Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael, this is Shane. We're talking about Chucky versus Godzilla versus the Montreal Comiccon.
It is a fight I want to see. Yeah, maybe they could have it at Comic-Con.
I mean, Chucky could become King Kong's friend, sit on his shoulder, and then they could fight Godzilla together. I like that idea.
Chucky doesn't need no Kong. He can take out Godzilla with just a butcher knife.
Well, now that he has full Wi-Fi access to everything...
That's true. Yeah, see, he's
entire premise
he has almost godlike powers now.
Yeah. So you and I...
That he doesn't really use very well in the new movie, but...
You and I attended a screening of the new Child's Play film, which is a reboot, rethink of the original series. Now, what's interesting is, I definitely went to this movie thinking that I might take a lot of breaks during the film and take a walk and stretch my legs, get some air, maybe sigh a lot, and just be completely out of it. Because you got to understand, there is, and I'm not looking at a list here, there's something like 8 movies in this series. So we had Child's Play back in, I want to say, 88.
Yeah, that was a trilogy in itself.
Yes and no. I mean, I saw that first film in the cinema, was not impressed or interested in the concept. It didn't grab me. So when they made it 2 and 3...
Yeah, exactly. None of the original trilogy I give much of a damn about.
Right.
But it's like after that, they sort of run with a premise and just rebrand it as Chucky films.
It becomes an exploitation genre fun fest once they really lean into the concept. And so you get Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky in these movies that I think Bride of Chucky is by Ronnie Yu.
Yes,
so
that's right.
It is spectacularly well directed. And
a real director out of Hong Kong where he made the quite spectacular The Bride with White Hair, which is one of the most gorgeous kung fu movies.
And later, the underappreciated Freddy vs. Jason.
Exactly.
Which I quite like, although I wish it had had one more script.
That guy who was doing like Zhang Yimou level type material in Hong Kong came over here and made schlocky horror movies that are
Splatterfest films.
Yeah, but like fun comedy splatter.
No, indeed. Agree.
It's an odd career shift, even for someone who is relocating from Hong Kong.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I went to this movie, this rethink of Child's Play. Now, the original series, if you talk to a super fan, they're just going to praise every moment of every film. And a lot of people like the later movies, the 5, 6, 7 of the series,
right,
because they were taken over by the original writer of the first movie, who came back, became the driving force behind them. But the thing is, they don't have a lot of energy. You watch them, and yeah, it's a killer doll movie, and he starts layering in all these concepts, like, much like Halloween 5. There's a cult behind this, and other factors that led to this doll being and you're like, this is a little much. But they definitely feel like the creator is, I don't want to say exhausted, but he's like, this is the only thing I've ever done that worked, so I'm just gonna keep pitching these straight-to-video Chucky sequels.
Yeah, they're outlandish, crazy, slapstick splatter films. Right. It's almost like this is kind of the same universe as Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. It's sort of that level of crazy.
Yeah, not the last 3. I'm assuming you've seen none of those.
I've seen... I've seen Bride of Chucky, I think.
Bride of Chucky is fine.
I think I've missed the last couple.
That's why I say there's 3 or 4 beyond what you've seen.
Okay.
And they are much lower budgeted, lower concept films of just... I mean, one of the movies is an entire movie of a haunted house film with a woman walking the halls and things just keep happening. And then she turns to the Chucky doll that's sitting on a table not moving and saying, it couldn't be you, could it? For a whole movie. And it's the big reveal of, is he moving or not? Really? I mean, we're 9 movies in.
Right.
So, they're not terrible films, but there's a lot of loyalty to these because it is the original creator. And I get that, but they're not winning me over by themselves. So, you and I went to see this complete reboot, which, let's make it clear, the original creator got nothing for, had no say in, and is completely 100% against.
Well, the great failing of the new one is that it's a Chucky film at all. Because the concept is different enough that they could have just made an original horror film.
And yet, the whole idea is you use the brand name.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's because it has a recognizable brand name.
Which allowed this movie to make money.
Because the original concept is that a serial killer into some weird occult stuff, I think he gets shot by the police or something, and he's dying in a doll factory, and he imbues a doll with his spirit and continues his killing spree as this doll. Whereas the new film is about a new doll AI system that is corrupted by a disgruntled employee in Vietnam before he kills himself.
Korea.
No, it's Vietnam.
Really?
Yep.
I was sure it was Korean.
No.
All right.
And it promptly kills himself. Mm-hmm. And then this doll is randomly selected back in the States, where ultimately the thing I found most amusing about it is that it's not an immediately monstrous doll.
No,
it's just a broken AI system.
Learn.
It's a broken AI system that really, really wants to do well and be a friend to its owner.
Right.
And because people suck so hard, it starts to learn bad habits.
Yep.
And specifically from the kids having a uproariously fun time watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So the doll thinks, well, that makes humans happy, right?
Yeah.
And they have to explain to him, no, stabbing us with a butcher knife, not a good thing. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll try and do better.
Yeah.
You kind of feel bad for this sorry little AI played by Mark Hamill.
It is surprisingly effective as I kind of care where this is going movie. That's the thing about it is, I think I was more invested in this movie than any of the previous Child's Play franchise.
Yeah, I would. I'd have to kind of agree with that. I do feel bad for Brad Dourif, having played Chucky for so many years. That he's just okay. Let's plug Mark Hamill in because he does lots of voice stuff. So
he's the flavor of the month for voices,
and he's so done with Star Wars that he'll happily take another gig.
But what was my comment? Right, because this is kind of a remake in theme only. I found out that they had their hands tied in a big way. Not one death sequence in this film was allowed to bear the slightest resemblance to anything in the previous Child's Play franchise. They were not allowed to recreate any sequences. They could have a murderous doll named Chucky, a boy named Andy, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. Everything else had to be rethought in this case. And it's interesting.
So there was no Friday the 13th stealing kills from Twitch of the Death Nerve.
None of that. Oh man, that is amazing. Watch those movies back to back. Watch Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2, and then watch Twitch of the Death Nerve and see every great kill scene stolen. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Twitch of the Death Nerve probably made no money.
Yeah.
And Friday the 13th was a outlandish success on that level of people who just said, let's just do that thing anybody else is doing just to see if we can make some money at it. They cleaned up. Mm. It's quite amazing. By the way, Friday the 13th has not had a sequel in over 10 years. And one of the reasons is because very recently the rights to the characters and the concept reverted back to the original screenwriter. And he's never seen a single one of the sequels.
Well, can you blame him?
And he has I'm actually quite fond of most of the movies in that series, not all.
Most, really? I'm fond of 6, because it's the funny one.
Right.
Other than that, they're mostly trash.
I like 1 to 6 on various levels, 5 being the low point. And
any Tom Savini gore effect in 1 and 4.
I think 4 is the masterpiece. So, it really doesn't.
Well, I know you're the world's biggest Corey Feldman fan.
That's
so,
correct.
Yeah.
Especially with a shaved head.
That'll win Jason over.
And of course, there's great moments in Jason X or you might call it Jason in Space. There's great moments in the terrible reboot movie, which I would definitely not call a good film, but it's got moments. And there's great moments in Freddy vs. Jason. So there's a lot in there in this series. And while I am not a fan of it, the Part 7, which is essentially Jason versus Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie, I didn't like any of that movie, but it is a very popular film. It is very beloved by people in the horror community, despite being edited to hell. That movie has almost no gore in it. It was all censored out by the MPAA at the time, and they've never done a...
I remember that one smelling of a certain promise, because within the Friday the 13th series, of course, there's the Tommy Jarvis trilogy.
Right.
I thought that was going to be the first part of a new trilogy starring that girl, but it probably did not pan out.
It should have been.
Yeah.
It would have been better than Jason Goes to Manhattan, which is horrid. I don't know how we got on the Jason movies, but we did.
Because crappy horror franchises.
I am a fan of that franchise to a degree. It has an interesting pedigree. But surprisingly, I kind of thumbs up the new Child's Play movie.
It doesn't take itself too seriously. It has a sort of wry, dark sense of humor. It could have gone more extreme for me,
Sure.
certainly when it sets up the premise that, oh, by the way, this EI system has now, at midpoint of this film, been hooked up to a Wi-Fi system where it can basically control random electronics.
Yeah.
It could have run with that premise much farther than it did.
It does okay, and you could, of course, do that in a sequel if this made enough money. I did enjoy the first 20 minutes of Aubrey Plaza just being a mega sarcastic character. Speaking to her own child, I don't think she says one line of dialogue straightforwardly. I think all of it is tongue-in-cheek, kind of pretending I'm the worst mother ever lines and gags, and she's just delightful in the film. I expected it to be a slum-in-it performance from her, and I actually thought she was kind of great in it. So, go figure. Child's Play, not a bad film.
Congratulations, Audrey Plaza. You're now playing moms.
Yeah, well, she said...
Time flies, doesn't it?
She said, in a recent interview, she said, I feel like I have what it takes to play this because I was raised by a single mom. To which I say, yeah, that's acceptable. I fully endorse that.
They do take pains to suggest that she got pregnant when she was 16 in the film, so...
Oh, did they?
Yeah. They mentioned either like a prom or a sweet 16 or something that it's like, oh yeah, okay, so you got pregnant really young. That's why you're the young single mom.
The Andy in this movie is significantly older than the Andy in the original film.
Yes, to the point where the doll is age inappropriate, but they get it for ironic, sarcastic reasons.
Well, also because it can manage your electronics. It
right.
can be the hub by which you run everything in your house. All your computers, your TV, your internet.
It's like
everything.
a Siri that could wield a knife.
Exactly. The fact that they give it enough physical ability to do that seems insane, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of bad AI choices in this film.
Bad AI choices.
Perhaps, hopefully this will be a Michael Crichton level of cautionary tale for future technology.
Yeah, I like that idea. There is actually a moment in this movie where somebody says something along the lines of, oh, well, we're not really sure how to control this particular little robot child, to which someone says, that's the beginning of every robot apocalypse story. And you're like, yes, it is. Thanks for pointing that out, movie.
Yeah, frankly, this is a better Terminator film than we've had since Terminator 2, so...
That's true. All right, well, we're just about out of time. I've been Michael Brody. I've been joined today by Shane Simmons. Shane, I hear you have a new book out. What's it called?
It's called Epitaph, which is the sequel to Necropolis, which was my shirt for the Comic-Con.
And still is available.
But they are both available on Amazon.
Your blog, perhaps?
No, go to Amazon, look my name up, Shane Simmons, and there's a ton of books now that I have either contributed to or written myself.
All right, well, let us know when those T-shirts become available online. All right, well, that's all our time.
I think I'm doing the underwear merchandising first.
It's literally all our time for today. Enjoy the news, people, because that's what we're coming around to now.
Low 1690 AM in Montreal.
All right. Once again, nobody comes for the next show. I'm so glad that they adamantly...
Well, I'm glad I brought T-shirts for everybody.
Let's make sure to give one to Dave. By give one, I mean jam it down his throat until he can no longer play music.
Oh!
Hey, you made it.
Hi.
We're just complaining about you not being here.
How are you guys doing?
We were just going, well, yeah, she's not coming.
Oh no, I just, yeah, right on time.
Enjoy Dave playing music louder than you will be playing it. I am going to make a formal complaint. It was too much today.
I'm kind of making a complaint as well because he is renting the studio until like October. So like no live performances can be scheduled by me because he